Hello, what's up, dear YouTube viewers? Every 4 years we have the FIFA World Cup, and I'm sure I'm not the only soccer fan to wonder, will there be a new world champion this time? Many of us want to see a new world champion, but unfortunately, it has not happened since 2010. And in all 3 times that I watched the World Cup, a team that has already won it again. But I'm sure many of us want to imagine a new world champion, and many of us are asking ourselves, will we ever see a new world champion? So in this cycle of videos, I decided to take every FIFA member and even past FIFA members that got banned right now, that have never won the World Cup, and ask myself, when will they ever do it? I separated everything into 3 categories. We'll get there in the next 4 to 20 years. We'll get there in the next 24 to 40 years. We'll get there in the next 100 years. And will not get there in the next couple of 100 years. I based my ratings on the fact that on recent results of those countries at the World Cup, production of players, so like how many good soccer players have been born in that country in the past, even if they never qualified for World Cup, as well as the overall economical situation in this country. I will not try to get too political in this video, but I also acknowledge that politics and sport are kind of interrelated, because when a country doesn't have money, when a country is in a bad economical state, they don't really have money for investing in sports. So I will be mentioning politics just briefly, just saying if the economical situation in this country is good or bad, and how this will impact. So I decided to make a cycle of videos. One video about UEFA, one about CONMEBOL, one about CONCACAF, one about AFC, one about CAF, and one about the OFC. I think this is what the Oceanian Football Federation are called. I start my video with UEFA. Now, before we start, I do want to acknowledge that many countries of the former Soviet Union are in UEFA. And of course, I cheer for them. So, in my observations, I will be a little optimistic for them. Not biased, no. I will not be just saying that they will win the World Cup very, very soon, just because I want that to happen, but I will be a little bit overly optimistic and saying everything that hoping everything goes by the most optimistic scenario. Okay, let's start. So let's start with the countries that I have said will get there in the next 4 to 20 years. I see only 4 countries that could potentially do it. Portugal, Netherlands, Croatia, and Norway. Let's start with Portugal. The country has always had great football infrastructure and a lot of soccer players born in that country. The 3 biggest football clubs in that country, Benfica, Sporting, and Porto, have produced some great players, and even other clubs such as Braga made their own great players. And many of those players went as far as to play for the Portuguese national football team. And they even had one of the greatest players in history, Cristiano Ronaldo, for a long time, as well as some other really good players such as Eusebio. But when it came to the World Cup, Portugal just couldn't get things to go their way. A couple of times they were really close, getting 4th place, So, and they got third place with Eusebio in 1966, but when it came to winning it, they were just never there. But I think this absolutely has the potential to change. Because Cristiano Ronaldo will soon leave the Portuguese team. And it can be a problem because for a long time everything was based on Cristiano Ronaldo. But on the other hand, as much as many Ronaldo Pixel fans don't wanna admit it, I think that Ronaldo leaving could actually benefit Portugal in the sense that everything no longer has to be tied around one player. And Portugal still has so many great players, such as João Neves and Vitinha, who are one of the greatest midfielders out there, Bruno Fernandes, as well as many young players such as Rodrigo Moura. Add that to the fact that the next World Cup will be hosted in Portugal. So I think Portugal absolutely has what it takes to win it in the next 4 to 20 years. The only thing they must do is not be under so much pressure. Okay, next up is the Netherlands. And the situation in the Netherlands is pretty much the same as I described in Portugal. For a long time they had some really great soccer players, and their clubs, Feyenoord, Ajax and PSV, have consistently produced great players, but when it came to the World Cup, the team always just lacked something. Even right now, Netherlands still has some great players. As a matter of fact, every club from the top 6 in the EPL has a player from the Netherlands. Virgil van Dijk in Liverpool, Nathan Ake in Manchester City, Matthijs de Ligt in Manchester United, Julian Timber in Arsenal, Mickey van de Ven in Tottenham, and Jurgen Hato in Chelsea. Right now, Ronald Koeman has just left the Netherlands team, and many people are expecting Javi to take charge. This is something that I will make a separate video about, commenting on the appointments of different managers to football teams, such as Zidane to France, Klopp to Germany, Jesus to Portugal, and others, and I will include Javi to the Netherlands if he does get appointed. For now, I don't know if Javi is the right fit, but no matter what, the Netherlands still has a great team. For a long time, they have been unlucky. They got all the way to the final, but stopped at the last moment. I do think that one of those times could finally become their lucky year, and they could win it, especially given the level of players that they have. Okay, now I also included Norway in the list, and this was a little bit controversial because sure, Norway had a great World Cup in the past, but they also almost never qualified before. So I was hesitant whether to include Norway in the list or not. But at the end, right now, Norway has truly a super generation of players. Erling Haaland, Antonio Nusa, and Alexander Sørloth. And what's better is that many of them are still very young. So I think specifically with this generation, Norway has an immense amount of potential. I don't know if it will be the same with the next generation, but I think specifically with this generation, Norway could absolutely do it. Now, this would be an upset if they win the next World Cup, but I think they have the potential, especially given that many countries appoint a new manager. So I would absolutely not be surprised if Norway wins the World Cup in the next 4 to 20 years. Maybe 4 years still too much. I would say 8 to 12 years is a sweet spot when all players know each other and can show off. Okay, now the final team I included to this list was Croatia. And sure, maybe I was a little over optimistic with that as a Slav for fellow Slavs, but Croatia's last statistic just cannot be ignored. They got medals twice in a row, in 2018 and in 2022. And keep in mind that was at a time when the World Cup already contained 32 teams. It's not like in the old times when the World Cup had 12 teams and it was very easy to get a medal. No, we are talking about the World Cup with 32 teams. Sure, right now Luka Modric is gone, but I still think that Croatia absolutely has the potential. They still have many good players like Lovra Mayer, Joška Gvardiol, Martin Baturina. I do think that if Croatian Football Federation continues at the rate they are now, they can absolutely win the World Cup. I don't think they could do it right away, but I do think that if the other clubs if the other national teams suffer a crisis and the new managers don't adapt really well, because like I said before, many teams are changing manager, Croatia could absolutely do it. Okay, next we move on to the category of teams that I think could win it in the next 24 to 40 years. And there I have included Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, Turkey, Austria, Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Sweden, Serbia, and Georgia. Let's start with Belgium. Now, I was tempted to include them in the 4 to 20 years, but then I changed my mind, because the Belgium golden generation is already gone. And the new generation is sure not bad, but also not as good as the old golden generation. So I don't think that Belgium will win it in the next 4 to 20 years. I could be wrong because I'm just a football blogger, not really a scout with immense potential and advanced technology, but I don't think that Belgium will win it. I do think that they will challenge top level favorites like they did to Spain this time, but not win it. Maybe in the next generation, if they continue to invest in their development schools and develop more players, I do think Belgium could win. If Jeremy Doku stays with the team, and they also invite other players, not invite, but grow other players inside of their academy, they could absolutely win it. Okay, next up is Switzerland. Now, Switzerland is just insanely good at producing goalkeepers. If the entire team was composed of goalkeepers, Switzerland would absolutely won the World Cup by now. But unfortunately, that's not how that works. However, I still think that Switzerland still has a lot of potential to win it in the next 24 to 40 years. Because Switzerland is a very rich country, untouched by conflict, so they have a lot of money to invest in football infrastructure. They have a lot of potential for naturalization, and they have produced some good players in the past. So I think Switzerland could absolutely win the World Cup in the next 24 to 40 years. I think the only thing that they need right now is maybe to have more consistent strikers and defenders, because they have good midfielders like Granit Xhaka and good goalkeepers like Gregor Kobel, but never have good good strike. Well, they have strikers and defenders, but not really as good as goalkeepers and midfielders. So I think this is what they need right now. And they also need a consistent coaching system that would develop great players. Okay, next up is Denmark. Denmark has made some great progress in development football recently, and a lot of great players such as Mikkel Damsgaard came out of that country. Unfortunately, recently they failed to qualify for the 2026 World Cup, but I think every team has their own bad years. And I don't think Denmark will end up being in the same crisis as Italy was. So I think Denmark still has a big potential. Oh, I think they have already started producing some great players, and if they continue at this rate, they can absolutely win the World Cup in the next 24 to 48 years. Okay, next up is Turkey. Now, I felt really controversial if I should include Turkey on this list or not, but at the end I still decided to include them because they still have a lot of good players, such as Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and even many young players like Arda Güler, Kenan Yıldız. And the Turkish Super League is on the rise right now, getting many good players. The only thing that Turkey I think needs is like more freedom when it comes to developing players, and less pressure from large businesses and people in politics. I think that if Turkey removed the limit on players and more Turkish players actually went to European leagues instead of staying for large wages in Turkish clubs, Turkey could do more. Okay, next, I included Austria in this list. I think Austria still has a lot of potential given that they are a rich country and that they have produced good players recently. I think the fact that Red Bull bought Red Bull Salzburg in Austria actually helps. I think that if more Austrian clubs had academies like Red Bull Salzburg does, then Austria would produce even more great players and they could win the World Cup more easily. So I think that if the situation continues at this rate, they could absolutely do it. Okay, next I included 3 countries from the former Soviet Union. My home country of Ukraine, Russia and Georgia. Let's start with my home country of Ukraine. Now, recently, the situation in Ukraine in terms of football development has been going a little more optimistic. Ukraine has good players in every position, and sometimes even 2 good players. Andrei Lunin, Anatoly Trubin, Zabarny, Nikolenko, many of them play for European clubs. Unfortunately, Ukraine still hasn't really gotten far in the Euros. In Euro 2024, they were placed in an easier group, but didn't do so well. Now, I think the key things Ukraine is missing, there are multiple things. Well, not multiple things, but a lot of things. The biggest problem is that the clubs in Ukraine are owned by oligarchs. And those oligarchs, unfortunately, many of them don't care about developing Ukraine as a football nation. They just care about making money and selling players for expensive. For example, if you look at the policies of Shakhtar Donetsk, they have signed many players from Brazil and elsewhere and sold them for bigger money, but Ukrainian players have not been getting so much time. I think that which Ukraine does have a limit on foreigners, but still many of Ukrainian players have either not been getting so much time or vice versa were too scared to go to a European club. The second biggest factor, I think, is that Ukrainian players need to train in more European top clubs and getting more regular playing time. Because if you look at the recent situation with Ukrainian players, many of them have been to European clubs but have not been getting a lot of playing time. For example, Mikhail Mudryk has been on the bench in Chelsea, Andrei Lunin has been on the bench in Real Madrid, and so on. I do think that if Ukrainian players were more active and left the club where they are benched, they could get more time, and as a result, the Ukrainian national football team could benefit massively. And the third biggest factor is, of course, the economy. The economy of Ukraine has been in decline for a long time by now. And this situation, investing in sports is just difficult. However, I'm still really optimistic for Ukraine, and I do think they could win the World Cup in the next 24 to 48 years. First of all, because Ukraine still produces a lot of good players and they still need time to develop. And I know right now this war, of course, doesn't help the development of sport, but I am still really hopeful that by the next 24 years the war can finally be over and both Ukraine and Russia can focus on developing sports. I really want great successes to both of those national teams. I think Ukraine has a lot of potential because recently they have gotten many good players and many players went to European clubs. Okay, now I also included Russia in that list, and the situation with Russia in a lot of ways is very similar to Ukraine. Many large clubs such as Zenit St. Petersburg, Spartak Moscow, and others are owned by big corporations. And they try to do something, but they don't really know too well about managing football. And the limits on foreigners also does not help, because Russian clubs try to get Russian players in a high wage so that they would not leave for Europe, and the Russian players are only happy with that. The situation is kind of the same as Ukraine, but also kind of different in a way. And even worse than that is that after the war, Russia has been banned from FIFA. And that, of course, is like, with that, there are zero chances of winning. However, I do think that Russia has the potential. First of all, because Infantino will face an election next year, I think it is, or maybe even this year, and chances are that he will lose the election and the new government will return Russia back to FIFA. And even if he doesn't lose the election, there still have been rumors that FIFA is considering returning Russia back. So I'm really optimistic about that. Another big factor is that many of the Russian players have become less scared of going to European clubs. For example, Matvey Safonov went to PSG and wasn't scared even when the club bought many other goalkeepers. But Arsen Zakharyan went to Real Sociedad, Daler Kuzyaev went to Havre, and many others. And even better than that is that before the war, Russia actually had talks with large agencies to help develop football in Russia. And I do think that they have the potential. Okay, now Georgia. Now, this is where my optimism really came into play. I was really hesitant whether to include Georgia or not, because sure, they had a good generation and they are on the rise, but still, they have never qualified for a World Cup and have qualified for Euros only once. However, I'm still optimistic for Georgia because the football players that they produce now are just great qualities. Kvicha Kvaratskhelia absolutely has the potential to win the Ballon d'Or, and they also have some other great players such as George Mikautadze, Georgi Mamardashvili, and others. And younger players are coming in too, such as Kirkishvili. I absolutely think that if Georgia continues at the current rate, they have the potential. Because they produced a lot of players, and unlike in Russia or Ukraine, Georgian players aren't really scared to go to European clubs. So again, I'm taking the most optimistic scenario possible, but I do think that Georgia has the potential. Okay, next up is Poland, Switzerland, and Serbia. I have included those countries as well. Let's start with Sweden. Now, for me, I think something that Sweden lacks is that they have been focused too much on strikers. Like, their strikers are just insane. Isak, Gyökeres, Elanga, Kulusevski, but they have not been focused on other lines, and this is what let Sweden down. I do think that if they continue at this rate and produce more other top players, they could absolutely do it. Okay, now Poland. Now they might be in trouble now with Lewandowski and Zelensky both gone, but I still think that they could produce good players in the future and maybe go as far as to win the World Cup. Okay, next is Serbia. Now, Serbia have had some good players such as Vlahovic, Mitrovic, Tadic, but I think like with Russia, the problem is that many of the Serbian players are too scared to make the step and go to European top clubs. And another problem I think is the coaching problem. Okay, next I included teams that will get there in the next 100 of years. And there I included Wales, Hungary, Czechia or Czech Republic, Scotland, Slovenia, Greece, Romania, Ireland, Slovakia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, Northern Ireland, Iceland, Montenegro, Kosovo, Bulgaria, and Kazakhstan. Now, pretty much the situation is all the same in those countries. They produce some great players, but they are just not at the level where they could win the World Cup as teams. I do think that if they continue the investment, they can absolutely win the World Cup. I think they need a lot of investment and more players playing in European clubs. Many of those countries also have strong diasporas in other countries, so that could help too. Now, the biggest controversy in this list is Kazakhstan. But I'm just a little flattered maybe by the recent statistics. They have gotten Dostan Safayev, who went to Chelsea, and another young talent who went to Barcelona. So I do think they have the potential, and even if right now they have not been doing that good, I think in the future they could do it. Okay, next is the last category for will not get there in the next 100 of years. And there are included North Macedonia, Finland, Israel, Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Armenia, Faroe Islands, Cyprus, Azerbaijan, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Moldova, Andorra, Gibraltar, Liechtenstein, Greenland, Malta, and San Marino. Neither of those countries have ever qualified for a World Cup. And sure, there are many other countries that have never qualified for a World Cup, but they at least had some good players, because those countries didn't really have that much good players. The only exception to this list is North Macedonia, but I still included them in the will not win the World Cup in the next 100 years, because their good players have been limited. Only Pandyev and Elmas are the only two good players. Everyone else have not really been that good. I absolutely wish good luck to those countries, just like to every other country that I included, but this is my opinion. Okay, there you have it, guys. If you like this video, give it a thumb up. If you dislike it, give it a thumb down. Subscribe to my channel, leave comments. Now, something I do want to mention is that I have included some countries both in UEFA and in other confederations that are not recognized by as an independent state by all nations. And I don't wanna get into politics of whether I agree that they should be recognized, but I'm just basing it off of the FIFA ratings. Because FIFA recognizes them, I have to include them too. No matter if I agree that they should be recognized as separate states or if not. And again, something I do want to mention is that I am a football blogger, not a scout and not a coach, so I might be wrong, and if your country didn't make it as high on that list as you have hoped, please know that I don't want to hate against your country, and I would be really happy if I was wrong. I would be happy if any new country wins the World Cup, but I'm just including I'm just including your country just based on recent situation. The situation could improve. Okay, hope you have a good day. Bye, guys.